What's up, guys? Nick Whalen here from RotoWire. Moving on to week 10 already in the NFL. I'm going to give you 5 bold predictions for the week ahead. We'll jump right into it, and we start in the NFC East. We got the first matchup of the season between the Eagles and the Cowboys. We're going to say the Philadelphia Eagles rack up 250 plus rushing yards on this Dallas defense. Now, I still may have my reservations about this Eagles team, specifically the decision making of Nick Sirianni, which was all over the place last week against Jacksonville, to put it nicely, but we got to give respect where it's due. Philly has ripped off now 4 straight wins coming out of its week 4 bye. The Eagles have started to settle into what they do best, which is run the dang football. They've run for at least 160 yards now in 3 straight games, well over 200 in 2 of those matchups against the Giants and the Jags. Saquon Barkley's running wild. Jalen Hurts is running wild. They've combined for 14 rushing touchdowns on the year. That's more than all but 3 teams have total in the NFL this season. On the year, Philly ranks top 5 in rush attempts, rushing yards, yards per carry. They're up to number 4 in the NFL in rushing EPA. And they're still mixing in a few deep shots per game to Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. But this is a run-heavy offense. They have an identity. They lead the NFL in run rate. They're dead last in total pass attempts. All these stats are to say Philly has found an identity that works. They'll now take that show on the road to Dallas this weekend, where they'll face off against the Cowboys team that, 1, cannot run the ball, and 2, much more importantly for our prediction here, cannot stop the run whatsoever. Dallas is down to dead last in the NFL in rush defense EPA. That means they're worse than the Carolina Panthers at stopping the run. Think about that. They're giving up 4.6 yards per carry, almost 150 yards per game. They gave up 223 on the ground to the Niners, 185 to the Lions, almost 300 to the Baltimore Ravens earlier this season. Dallas could get Micah Parsons back this week. That certainly helps, but it, to me, doesn't really solve the much deeper rooted problem in Dallas. This should be a smash spot for the Eagles offense this week. We'll say the Eagles rack up 250 plus rushing yards as a team. And that means, of course, that it'll be another huge fantasy day for Saquon Barkley. Before we get to the rest of our predictions, please take a moment to give this video a like if you're enjoying it, and please hammer that subscribe button. You see it right there. Just hit it like Prime Vodtez Perfect, Prime Ed Reed. I don't care. Press it as hard as you can. We really appreciate that. It helps ensure that you won't miss any of our NFL content here on the channel throughout the season. Okay, bold prediction number 2 for week 10. Tua Tagovailoa throws for 300 plus yards. The Dolphins saved their season for now, at least, on Monday night against the LA Rams. So this is now the 3rd game back for Tua. Dolphins have lost 2 last-second games to Arizona and Buffalo over the last 2 weeks. And to now say that this is a must-win is not an exaggeration. A loss would drop Miami to 2-7, would essentially need to win out at that point to feel like you have a chance at a wild card spot. They head on the road to LA, playing in a dome. That's a big upgrade after playing on the road at Buffalo last week. Total for this game, 50.5. We should expect to see points. Rams still giving up a ton of yardage defensively. Gave up 400 plus to Seattle last week. That was without DK Metcalf. Probably lose that game 9 times out of 10, if we're being honest. They got some wild turnover luck thanks to Geno Smith in the second half of that game. But anyway, the point is, Miami should be able to move the ball on what's still a very shaky LA secondary. Rams are 30th in coverage grade at PFF at the halfway point. Gave up huge gains to JSN and Tyler Lockett over and over last week. But the Rams have been much better against the run. So this should be a pass script for Miami. Kind of a kitchen sink game offensively, if we're being honest. I think we get a close back and forth game. I think Tua Tagovailoa throws for over 300 yards for the first time since week 1 against the Jags. And while we're at it, we'll say he tacks on 3 touchdowns as well. Dolphins get a massive win on the road. They keep their season alive, at least for the time being. Number 3. The Arizona Cardinals, we'll say they win by 2 scores over the New York Jets, and they hang on to the NFC West lead. Maybe this isn't all that bold, but we got to mix in something a little bit more feasible here, right? Tightest spread on the board this week is down in Arizona, where the Cardinals do welcome in the New York Jets, the red-hot New York Jets, who got a much-needed win over that banged-up Texans team last Thursday. We do have a rest advantage here for the Jets. Maybe, just maybe, they have some momentum going after that win, but frankly, I'm not buying it. I think the Cardinals win this game by 2 scores to remind us that in the end, the Jets are simply just not a good football team. Yeah, they beat the Texans, but that was a Houston team without its 2 best receivers, with a banged-up offensive line. Will Anderson was in and out. C.J. Stroud was even banged up in that game. I don't put a ton of stock into that win, especially with all the preposterous mistakes that the Jets made in the first half and really continue to make every single week this season. Meanwhile, this Arizona team, first place in the NFC West. They played one of the league's toughest schedules to date. They're coming off a big-time win over the Bears last week. The defense showed up. The running game went for over 200 yards. They completely stifled the Bears' ground game, which did not think would happen coming into that one. Kyler Murray did not have to be superhuman. And that is a very, very good sign for the Arizona Cardinals offense going forward. I think they keep it rolling this week. I don't think the Jets solved any of their problems last week against Houston. This is a team that still has a ton of issues on both sides of the ball. Frankly, might be more concerned about their defense at this point than the offense. Give me the Cardinals to win this game by 2 touchdowns. James Conner will say he notches his 5th 100-yard day of the season on a Jets defense that ranks 22nd in the NFL against the run. Number 4 this week, Christian McCaffrey. We got to get something for Christian McCaffrey here, right? We'll say he has 100-plus yards from scrimmage in his return, his season debut this week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He should be back in action. As I record this video, it's not official, but everything is pointing to Christian McCaffrey getting back on the field this week. Got to find a way to get him involved with the bold predictions. Totally fair to question what the workload will look like for CMC. He has not played football since the Super Bowl, so we're talking about a long layoff here. But this is bold predictions, after all. I'm not going to sit here and say that Christian McCaffrey is going to carry 10 times for 58 yards. That doesn't do anybody any good. So we're going the complete opposite direction. Christian McCaffrey comes back with a vengeance. He helps tear apart this Bucs defense that's handing out yards to everybody who will take them of late. Tampa's given up well over 400 yards per game over its last 5 outings, surrendered 550 to Atlanta, 508 to Baltimore. The Ravens rushed for 244 alone on this defense. Atlanta, Kansas City both had success as well over these last couple of weeks. I do respect what Tampa's doing offensively without Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. It's been impressive. We'll see if that continues this week. If it does, that means we get a close game. Maybe we get more CMC in the second half. But really, the defense is the concern here for Tampa. Just a really, really difficult spot. Short week for the Bucs. Played at Arrowhead on Monday night. Niners, of course, coming in fresh off the bye. Christian McCaffrey makes his return in a big way, puts up over 100 yards from scrimmage in his long-awaited 2024 debut. We'll finish out with another running back prediction. Najee Harris. We'll say he's going to notch his 4th straight 100-yard game. Steelers get a win in Washington over the Commanders. Najee Harris, baby. I don't think I have Najee Harris in a single league, and I felt good about that during draft season. Nobody was really fired up to draft Najee Harris, but he's come on over these last 3 games. 20, 16, 16 fantasy points over the last 3 weeks. He's gone over 100 yards in each of those games against Vegas, the Jets, and the Giants. He's averaging 6 yards per carry in that span, and he's still sharing snaps with Jaylen Warren, who's still averaging about 9 carries per game during that 3-game stretch. Now he goes up against the Washington defense that, granted, has improved, it feels like, with each passing week, but they're still dead last in yards per carry allowed to running backs this season at 5.2. They're 28th in rush defense EPA. Just gave up 129 to DeAndre Swift a couple weeks ago, gave up 100 yards to Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary last week against the Giants. They added Marshawn Lattimore this week. That helps the secondary. Not really going to do a ton for this run defense. I think we're going to get a really competitive game with Pittsburgh coming out of the bye. Steelers now have a legitimate passing game as well, which I think has really opened things up for this running game and for Najee Harris. I don't think it's a coincidence that he's starting to come on right when Russell Wilson takes over. Najee Harris does it again. He runs for over 100 yards. He gives you close to 20 fantasy points. He joins Joe Mixon as the only players this season to rush for 100-plus in 4 straight games. Mixon has done it the last 4 games for Houston. Prior to Mixon, by the way, it hadn't been done since Derrick Henry in 2022. He actually had a 5-game and a separate 4-game streak back in that 2022 season. All right, that's going to do it for our 5 bold predictions for NFL Week 10. Let us know in the comments. What do you think? I'm usually way off on at least 2 or 3 of these, if not more. So get in there. Tell us what you agree with, what you disagree with, who you think's going off this week. Make sure you go check out rotowire.com/try, TRY. That gets you free access to everything on our site, rotowire.com/try.